Now we ought to talk a little about how you actually produce some of these materials. Good quality materials are easier to produce than ever before because of technological advancements, if, that is, you have the budget for the equipment and the people who can operate the equipment.
You should at the very least have a typewriter and access to a photocopy machine. You can produce a newsletter with these two pieces of equipment, plus paper and rubber cement or glue stick. You can create a masthead with press-on letters or have a printer make one for you. You can paste it up on a layout board and use it each time you produce a newsletter. Just temporarily stick your first page of each new issue to the board and photocopy it. Or have several hundred sheets pre-printed with the masthead at one time. Then photocopy or print the current newsletter on your pre-printed blanks.
The typewriter and photocopier are amazing gadgets to someone like me, but you may have access to equipment which will make the process even better. If your church has a computer, you probably have word processing software. The program is probably not hard to learn and gives you the flexibility of correcting all your mistakes before printing anything. You can even move paragraphs around and automatically justify the margins or check your spelling. You can also easily transfer information from one article to another, eliminating the need for retyping. You may even be able to get software for a desktop publishing program like First Publisher or PageMaker. Desktop publishing is not easy to learn, but it allows you to do typesetting, layout, and paste up in one step. But you certainly don't have to have a computer to print a newsletter. I should know. There are several decisions to make about the format of your newsletter. The simplest format is a standard 8.5 by 11 sheet, printed both sides. Any photocopier can print it, and it can be sent in a business envelope or folded twice and sent without an envelope. If you want to add pages, you can. Simply include them in the envelope or staple two sheets together. The next easiest format is a legal-sized sheet, folded once. This gives you 4 pages, 7 inches wide and 8.5 inches high. Most photocopiers will handle legal-sized paper. Then there's this size, 11 by 17, folded, making 4 8.5 by 11 pages. Now, some photocopiers will handle paper this size. If yours won't, you'll need to have a printer reproduce your newsletter. To make it a 6-page newsletter, add an 8.5 by 11 sheet in the middle. If you have time and budget, include pictures in your newsletter. But the most important thing is that people get the news they need to know. It's usually wise to have a main story which you start on the front page and then smaller stories about less important topics. The pastor may want to write a regular column, and you should also include the church calendar in your newsletter. Contact the various department heads for news and announcements and make special assignments to your committee to fill your newsletter. Now, as for distribution, you could give them out at church, but then you would miss the people who are often absent. And one of the reasons for doing a newsletter is to keep the people who are not always at church informed of church activities. If you have a way of knowing who is not at church, you can mail to just those people. Generally, however, it's better to simply mail to everyone who is a member of the church. Your church probably maintains a mailing list. Getting a newsletter in the mail rather than at church means that each family will be reminded of the church an extra time during the week. Your church may already have a bulk mailing permit. If not, it's well worth it to get one if you'll be mailing at least 200 pieces.
However, in order to save money on postage by having a non-profit bulk mailing permit, your newsletters must be sorted by zip code. If your mailing list is on computer, your mailing list program will probably sort and print your list according to zip code. Then you only have to apply the labels, bundle the newsletters, and deliver them to the post office. When planning a newsletter, you must commit to having it out regularly and on time. Do not commit to a schedule you cannot maintain. Better to publish every other month and meet your deadline than to promise a newsletter monthly and fail to get it out on schedule. Your newsletter should reflect the personality of your church in its typography and graphics. Don't try to crowd too much information on one page. If it looks difficult to read, most people won't read it. Don't be afraid to leave some areas blank. White space makes the page more inviting. Put the name of the newsletter in large letters on the first page. Use thick lines called rules or boxes to separate articles on the page so the reader won't be confused. If you have desktop publishing equipment or if a printing company is setting your type, choose a type style which is very readable. Generally, for body copy, type with serifs is more readable than sans serif type styles. And be careful not to mix too many type styles in your newsletter. Usually 3 is the most you'd want to use, perhaps with an occasional novelty style for a headline. Artwork makes a newsletter more lively and keeps it from just being blocks of type. You can do your own, or you can buy clip art at art stores to give you a ready library of art designed for this purpose. Improvements in the quality of today's photocopiers mean you may also be able to paste photos on your newsletter and get reasonably good results. This way you can have photos without cost of half-tone negatives which are required if a printing company does your newsletter. Or if you have desktop publishing and a method of scanning photos, you may be able to include pictures and artwork and simply print them out with the rest of the newsletter.
As you can see, there are a great many things you can do as a communication leader to help make your church's activities a success. How much you do and what form your communication committee will take will be determined by the size and needs of your congregation. You have a real adventure and some very satisfying service ahead of you. And I wish you Godspeed until our next lesson, when we will be considering the magic of photography. See you then.